It's coming. All right, welcome everyone to another Blueprint for Peak Performance. I'm Brandy Smith with Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Performance Training and Perfect 10 PT Academy, online courses for coaches, parents, and athletes. I'm super excited to have you guys here. Last week, we all as a group, I think, decided we wanted to do, and you guys can correct me, we wanted to work on handstand shaping, and handstand positions. Is that the case? I want to check in before we go on because it's y'all's time. This is the time you guys get to ask as much as you want, and we answer as many questions as we can in the hour.
Brandy, that was a request from Sean a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't do it last week, and he wasn't here last week, so I don't know if he's here this week.
Yeah, I know he's not here yet, and I had a couple other people say they also wanted to do it. So I mean, we can do it if you guys want to do it. I did want to check in because last week we talked a bunch about fear and about the skill ladder progression and working through the ladder, how to work the ladder. We talked about mental sets and mental choreography. We talked about calming the alarm system. We did all those things. We talked a little bit about vestibular going backwards. Um, we said we could go down that rabbit hole as well. Sean is not here right now. So Sean, if you're listening to this recording, you should come so you can get your questions answered. So what do you guys, first of all, I wanted to check in for those of you that are working on the ladders with your kids and are working through, the skill ladder progression, how we worked it, and some of all those techniques. Does anyone have like an experience to share about?
Yeah, let me share something real quick, Brandy. So I didn't do the skill letters exactly like as it is, but I did take the visualizations and the cues a little bit and worked on some things with Aria right before her last meet. So we were doing our beam routine. And so one of the things I noticed is that she would do her beam routine, but she wasn't really talking to herself. She wasn't really telling herself what she was doing. And so just that piece of like what you were talking about, visualization and stuff. So we went through and said, okay, so I want you to, tell me what you're going to do, sit in one spot and tell me how you're going to do this. She had a really hard time. Like she forgot her routine, like sitting in one spot. So I kind of understood that she's not going to be able to do that beam routine if she can't even tell me how she's going to do it. Right. Like, and so the first time I think we went through it, it took us 40 minutes to go through a 1 minute beam routine. It got shorter and shorter and shorter. It's still not perfect. It was probably around 3 to 4 minutes. She still struggles sometimes, but her confidence on the beam at that meet, her like presentation, all of that, like night and day improvement. It was so nice. And I'm not like, I don't want to look at scores or anything like that, but just in general, like her confidence, her like where she was looking, the fact that she was looking with her chin up, like there was just like a lot more presentation in her routine compared to everything else that I've seen. And there were less wobbles, and so it was just interesting. And obviously that was a 2-day exercise. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping we can get faster at it, and she can get better at it too, and get more comfortable, because it's definitely something that I reflect back, and I used to do that, but I didn't know what I was doing or why I was doing it. But after your talk last time, I sat down and I said, okay, say it out loud. Like, let me hear what you're saying. It doesn't matter what you say, but you have to say it to yourself. So I just wanted to share that.
So if you guys wanted me to go into little details, I can go into details how I actually make that mental choreography. Is that something you guys would be interested in? Just raise your hand or click yes, put yes in the or Y in the chat. Do you guys want me
One
to go through?
one thing before you
Yeah.
go on to that, you had talked about the vestibular connection last week, and you said that you would go into that, and that's something I would really like to understand more of before we get too far away of it. Just
Yeah.
what that connection is, and how to
How to train it.
understand, yeah, and well, how to train, but also understand what it is that's being trained. I'm not sure I fully understand you what you mean by vestibular.
Yeah.
And I also have some feedback on the latter as well.
Yeah, so go ahead and tell me. So I'm just going to write myself a note in the chat. So we want to go through vestibular and what it means, involves, and maybe how to train it. So we'll go down that in a second. And so I just wrote myself a note in the chat, guys, so I don't forget. But yeah, in the meantime, Patricia, share with us your experience with working the ladder and the rules of the ladder and the mental choreography, the visualizations. Like, what was your experience with, oh my gosh,
Esperanza?
Bronza, thank you. I was like, just like a momentary break.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll see it tomorrow. You'll remember.
So what was your experience?
So one thing, and you've heard her say this, is that when things are going well, she doesn't do all of the things that she's learned from you and from other coaches of the visualization and the self-talk and the confidence building. Um, but I have been reminding her after practice, like, hey, did you have anything that needs to go into the piggy bank? Make sure you write it down. So she's been doing that. And then also reminding her, okay, where are you on your ladder? And then what's the next step? One piece of feedback that she gave me, and I wasn't sure, I actually told her she should ask you what to do with it, is she's realizing now that the stuff she put on her ladder is easier than she thought. And so now she's thinking, oh, maybe I need to reorganize my ladder because there's stuff that I thought was no big deal that's probably higher up, and stuff that I thought was tougher turned out to be easier than I thought. So I don't know if my ladder is in the right order.
Yeah. So see, this is experiential learning at its best. This is how we create good learners, right? Like the thing is as a parent, as a performance coach, as a coach, my goal is to teach an athlete to think for themselves. I want athletes to question everything. Now, some coach might be listening to this and going, I don't want my athletes to question anything. I want them to just do the thing. And now I will tell you also, as a parent, you might say, I don't want my kid questioning everything. I want them to do what I ask them to do. But I will say that if you put the energy up front to allow them, which Patricia, I know you are, to question things, you actually create a much more independent, logical thinking young adult that enters into the world. And so my job as a parent is to get my kid ready to enter into the world, right? And my job as a provider, actually, whether your parents who are here who use me know this, my secret little mission is actually to get them ready for the world. And I want them to master their mind and their body in the process, right? And so what you have found, Patricia, in the space that you've created for Esperanza is in the work which she's done with me and other providers I know as well, is that we're creating a independent thinking athlete who then starts with something. Like the thing is if you have nothing, you have to start somewhere. So if there's no ladder, we're all over the place and misguided. We're unguided. We don't know if we're misguided or if we're properly guided. We're just unguided, right? But if we create a ladder and we have this stair stepping effect, and in her mind, she's like, okay, this needs to happen, and that needs to happen, and that needs to happen, and this needs to happen. And then she starts doing the things and she goes, oh God, this is way harder than I thought. I actually am having a harder time. And this happens sometimes. I was talking with another coach recently about an athlete that they cannot get to do things going down the decline, right? And in the coach's mind, a decline is easier because the decline is helping them go into the back handspring. And I was like, yeah, but for their alarm system, it actually could be more challenging if they have a vestibular movement issue. And so that might be one of those things where the athlete says, I thought this would be easy because in my mind, it's helping me, but in my alarm system and in my body experience, it's harder. And so what's super cool about this experience is now she can go in and recreate a ladder. So I would highly recommend creating a new ladder. If she can do that before she comes in and sees me, we can review it, bring the old one and the new, and we can see how, and then the more ladders you create, and the thing is like, let's say I'm creating a ladder for front tumbling something, and then I'm creating another ladder for like a release move on bars or something. Those are very different skill progressions, and I might use the same formula based on this is easier, that's harder, this is low impact, that's more impact, this is a spot, this is without a spot, like that kind of thing. And that formula may work at first, but then we realize in that, oh, when I'm releasing the bar, there's a couple things my brain's not getting that I need either in or I have them out of sequence. Whereas on front tumbling, it might seem more logistically easy to go from, a tumble track to an air track to a rod floor to a floor. So the more experiences they get, the more they're learning about themselves and what their brain and body need, right? And so what she can do is just go in and reorganize that ladder based on her new experience. And they're not, that way she's not like pigeonholed into whatever ladder she originally created. Like, I think it's a good lesson also in life that like we can change our mind. Like we're not stuck to thinking that it has to be one way. And when we start something that thinks needs to be this way and we realize it's not working, can I change ladders? Can I change directions? And this is like a really great lesson for life because we're training our brain to do that. We're training our brain to set up a structure and then analyze, is this structure working for me? And when it's not, what adaptations do I need? What's working on this ladder? What's not working on this ladder? And what do I want to change? And how do I think, will that make me better? Right. So I would just ask those questions and have her redo a new ladder. And then what will happen as they get, like I said, as they get on the top of the ladder, you'll find that you don't need all 20 rungs. You only need 5. Right. And so then you warm up this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 5, and then you do the thing. Right. Like it becomes less rungs. I think my flick lay became like 3 runs or maybe 4. By the time I was like done with, conquering the ladder. Right. Does that make sense, Patricia?
Totally makes sense. And I didn't want to tell her maybe you should create another ladder because I thought, well, I don't want to mess with what Coach Brandy said. So I figured I would ask you first to see what you thought, or have her ask you when she saw you next. But yeah, I'll have her work on that tonight.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that way tomorrow when she sees you, you can review it with her.
I think also recognize for her how intuitive she is.
Yeah.
Like and this is a part, so this is what I love about the learning experience through sport is you have an opportunity as a parent and me as a coach and as the other coaches going, look how in tune you are to your body.
Yep.
You're learning so well how you learn. And you're learning what you need to achieve a goal. And maybe there were too many steps. Like at first you thought you needed to break it down to all the steps. Now you're realizing like, oh, this is really easy. Well, then maybe I just do one there,
Yeah.
and move on. Or maybe that's just so easy. You realize that it's actually a repetitive step. So sometimes when we're afraid of something the very first time, we will create repetitive small steps. So like, an example of this would be like on a series on beam or just a back handspring on beam, or even like trying to get to vertical for aria on a handstand. They'll do a handstand on the floor line. They'll do a handstand on the laser beam, and they'll do a handstand on the low beam with panel mats, which is basically like the laser beam or the floor. And they'll get themselves all the way up to the medium beam, and they go, wait, the panel mats is the same as the laser beam, right? Like, so they might say, I don't think I need that. And that's okay to take out. But if they're taking out giant steps, then we need to caution them, right? Like if they're taking out something that's a significant change, like maybe they decide to take out from the low beam with the panels, they decide to take out everything from the low beam to the high beam. Like that's too big of a jump for the brain and the body. They need some stair steps till they work through the ladder. Once you get really good work through the ladder, I warmed up on the floor. And then clearly I competed on the high beam, right? Because I didn't need the medium and low beam because I had conquered the ladder at that point. Does that make sense, Patricia?
Absolutely makes sense.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
on that note that you just said with the handstand to vertical, actually,
Yeah.
In talking to her, it actually seemed like it was definitely fear related, but it was fear related, not from the ladder was working. What I found was she didn't know how to fall. Like her fear was, what if I go too far vertical and I lean the opposite? I lean a direction that I'm not used to. So the coach actually worked with her on turning.
Yeah.
And like basically you can't just do a quarter turn because you're parallel to the beam or whatever. So you have to do almost like a full turn off the beam. And that's what she was not sure about. So once we figured out, once we figured out how, no, not like vertical, meaning like, what if she goes like past vertical?
Right. So if she goes handstand and she starts to fall, she's going to have
so
to
she needs
turn.
to turn off the beam, right? So
Yeah.
so basically that's what we needed to work on. And then once we figure that out, now it's like I wouldn't say always at vertical, but I'd say about 90% at vertical now. So it was
practicing the fall.
yeah, practicing the fall. Exactly.
Yeah,
so that was one of
practicing
the steps.
alternative.
That was one of the steps we put in the ladder is practicing the fall. Like basically
Yeah.
she'd get to handstand and then she'd fall off. Like
Yeah.
deliberately fall off.
Deliberately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. That is one of the big things. Like I'll tell athletes when they go for something the first time, like just get over, just do it, right? Like there's no judgment, no whatever, because I want you to figure out how to fall, how to land, how to like not be perfect. And practicing like those falls, especially if that's a barrier, like if they've never done it before. A handstand on beam is one of those first skills that like they've never gone vertical and they really don't know what to do with it if they don't, like if they go past, right? Same thing with casting the handstand on the low bar. That's another one where sometimes they'll do drills where we just cast all the way over and flat back onto a big stack of mats, or they'll cast over and have them pirouette out and fall. And just practicing that helps remove one of the fears of like, well, now what, right? So that's really good. I'm glad you guys added that to the ladder. I forgot to talk about that last week. That's really good. Any other like feedbacks or thoughts, Trista, that you guys have been working on your ladders or working on? And so do you guys want to go into some of this stuff about the vestibular system today? Since Sean's not here, we'll put in a request. I'll text Sean. I'll be like, or I'll send him a message, say, hey, if you gotta want to do handstand work, you got to show up. Do you guys want to do a little bit more about the vestibular system and how it helps us and hinders us in performance? And how it can affect fear?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. Anyone else? Madhu, Trista, you guys on board for vestibular stuff?
Sounds good.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to pop up a picture for you guys so that we can kind of talk about, okay. This will work, I think. That one's kind of cool because it shows you how deep it is inside. Okay, we'll do both of these. This is a good picture. Good. And then we'll see if it goes up here. Yeah, and then we'll do this picture. Oh no, this is actually, hold on. Let me find a good picture that I like of the vestibular. Yeah, I think I like this one better. Yeah, and then we'll do a close-up of that. Yeah, we'll go with this. Okay. Okay. So, our balance system, like the system in our body that helps keep us upright, like staying upright against gravity, bending backwards, flipping backwards, going throughout space, knowing where we are, that balance, like our whole balance system is made out of 3 different systems that work together. So the visual system, right? And a lot of athletes are visually dominant. And so the information we get from our eyes tells us like how far something is, how close it is, how fast it's moving towards us. All this information we're taking in with our eyes and where it is kind of in space in conjunction to where I am. Another piece of that, though, is our vestibular system, which I'll talk about in a second, because they interact very closely with our eyes. And then the third system that we use to help us with balance and knowing where we are in space are our joint receptors. So inside every joint in our body, we have little bitty receptors that feel mechanical pressure, that feel movement. We have also inside our tendons, we have something called Golgi tendon organs. And then inside our muscles, we have something called muscle spindle fibers. And those 2 different receptors work together. Golgi tendon organs give information on tension being put. And then the muscle spindles give us information on contractile and receptors of the muscles, right? So all of these like proprioceptive receptors send information and signals to the brain. I have a really good picture of that, of the proprioceptors, but I'm gonna see if I can just find one really quick online because I don't have my presentation pulled up. Let's see. Proprioceptors. Images. This one will work. All right. Okay, so let me pop up a quick little picture about the proprioceptors. Where did my Zoom go? There you are. Okay. So I'll just share this little image. Okay. Okay. So what you can see here, let's see if it'll let me, no, it won't. Okay. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So what you can see here is these, you have little receptors. So you have Golgi tendon organs here inside the tendons, and you have muscle spindle fibers inside here. They are little receptors, right? And then we also have joint receptors, mechanoreceptors that feel pressure that are inside the joints as well. All of them send information through the nervous system to the spinal cord. And that spinal cord, so there's there's actually a couple pathways. So one pathway is a direct connection that sends direct information from just information in the spinal cord. Doesn't even have to always go to the brain, by the way, and goes down and can create reactions to the muscles. So we take in information from the muscle spindles, we take in information from the Golgi tendons, we even also take in information from the little receptors. And there's a direct loop that will send information to the muscles and tell muscles to contract or relax or to do this or do that, which is basically contract or relax, right? But there's another loop at the same time that's taking in the same information and making judgment from the brain. So it'll go up the spinal cord all the way up to the brain. The brain and motor cortex of the brain will send information down to the spinal cord and into the muscles and other tissues as well, not just muscles, by the way, fascia and other tissues. And it will create reactions, right? It'll create quick reactions, activations, etc. So back to that whole, like if there's a lion in the room, then you can activate this system very quickly and contract certain muscles to protect the body from a lion, right? So we talk about a lot about how that's closed shoulders and closed hips is very common because it's, you know, protecting the organs from getting attacked by, let's just say, a so-called lion, right? So all of these work together, the proprioceptor system as well as the vestibular system and the eyes. So let's talk a little bit about the vestibular system. I liked this picture because it shows you how deep the inner ear is. So the vestibular system is information coming from your inner ear, and it goes from your inner ear to your brain, and it interacts also with information from your eyes as well. So if there's a mismatch between what my eyes are seeing and the information my inner ear is giving me, that's going to raise a red flag in my brain. It's going to raise the alarm. And when the alarms are raised, the number one job is protect. And so it'll put the brakes on, slow you down, stop you from going because there's a mismatch between eyes and ears. Now, you're also taking in information from those joint receptors. And if there's a mismatch there, it will also then put the brakes on, right? So your brain is super amazing and doing this in milliseconds, which is pretty awesome. But you know, its number one role and default will always be to protect, which is also why if you do some research on like the world of psychology, we are actually kind of wired to focus on negative thinking. And that's why we have all these little tools like in the ladder and mental choreography, visualization, action words. All of those things are because ultimately, because our brain's job is to protect us, we are actually wired to see the negative. We are wired to see problems. We are wired to see, oh, that like ground, that footing, it doesn't look very solid, probably shouldn't go there. That guy, that's not a safe individual. They're going to backstab me and I'm not going to get food because I'm back to that primal state where he has to gather food and I have to fish and, you know, all the things. So between social interactions all the way up to physical actions and being in our environment, our brain is wired to find the fault, find the problems, find the negativity, because it wants to protect us. And so switching our thought processes and spending a lot of time on that positive language, positive talk, we've talked about those things, giving our mental monkeys something to do will help kind of calm down those alarm systems in the first place. Now, my alarm will get triggered if one of these three systems is not giving the same information. So if I'm taking in information with my eyes, I'm getting information through my muscles and my tendons and my joints. And I'm also getting information from my inner ear. If they don't match up, brain's job is to protect. It'll put the brakes on. So this is the ear, and you can see deep inside the ear canal, we have our tympanic membrane, which is, our eardrum. And then we have this nice little auditory ossicle. So it's this nice little tube that goes in. And then we connect into what we have is the vestibular, like this is the deeper inner ear, right? And we have the semicircular canals. There are 3 of them. The other one is like back here, but we have anterior, lateral, and posterior canals, and they have fluid inside them. And the movement of that fluid inside those canals actually gives information to the brain. You have the vestibular cochlear nerve, which is how all of this information is sent to the brain. Now, like we have this kid at one of my daughter's after school gymnastics program. He has different stimulus behind his ear. And he actually has, he's hard of hearing, and part of what he has is a vestibular cochlear implant. And so what's happening is his nerve here is not conducting enough information to his brain. And so he gets an implant that helps to improve the conduction so that he can hear. But guess what? That affects also his balance. So he has to do some training, or needs to. I don't know if he's doing it or not, but we can train these new technologies that we have to help get as most accurate information you can get from here into this nerve and to the brain. Now you have the cochlea, which is this nice little like shell looking structure. And inside that, let me see if we have, this has not got all the pieces. Hold on one second, guys. Inside that, oh, I guess I didn't pick that one. Okay, see if I can do this one. So inside, oh, I had it on a different page. Okay, so we have the eardrum, and then we have all these different parts to this piece, and there's a lot of pieces. Look how tiny these pieces are, and they are tiny. They're microscopic. They are not big. So in relation, this whole area, this whole picture right here that you see is this tiny little space. So it's very, very tiny. All of this, it's very tiny little organs. This little picture is coming from here. So this is very zoomed in, but you have the semicircular canals where you have the fluid. The fluid gives information through the nerves, to the brain, right? The vestibulocochlear nerve, which is a cranial nerve. So this goes straight to the brain. And then inside the cochlea, do we not have? Oh my goodness, there it is. I was like, I saw a picture. Okay, let's see. So inside, we have little hair follicles that give us information about vibration. And so our vibration, this is right here, inside here. These are inside. So we have the utricules and the saccules, which are down here. And inside, we have these little hair follicles that give us information. We have fluid rushing in and out through here, and they're also sending information and rushing over the hair follicles. And then inside these places here, we have something called ear rocks. They're called the otoliths. Where are they? Are they in this? Let's see if they have a picture of it. So inside part of the ear, we also have ear rocks, which are like these little bitty crystals inside our ears that also will just slightly move and stay stationary and give more information about where we are in space. All these parts communicate to the brain. And that's the most important part. So like one is, I'm just showing you, it's such an important organ, and it gives so much information that our body shoves it deep inside a bunch of bone to protect it. And that's how important the inner ear is. And we have the fluid rushing, we have little hair follicles, and then we have little ear rocks inside there. And the movement of all those things communicate together, send information to the brain, and tell you where you are moving in space. And I was just working with an adult gymnast, actually. I work with several adult gymnasts across the country, well, across the world, actually. She's in another country. And she was saying how much she was struggling with a round off and how she actually doesn't like them. She's okay with it. She wants to do it, but like she couldn't figure out, why do I not like a round off? And in reality today, we realized that she had an issue. And if you think about the inner ear, wherever the inner ear is going in space, you are getting information to the brain. And then the brain is working with all those other structures I talked about, the proprioceptive feedback, the vestibular stuff, the eyes, they're all working together to create an action, right? Which might be a round off or a vertical handstand or a kick or just walking down the street, picking up your kid, flipping backwards though, like all those things, right? Those are all reactions from the information being put in. And what we realized is that she had trouble with multiplanar directional feedback to her inner ear. So when you think about like a handstand, in a handstand, someone's head, their inner ear has to go from upright to horizontal to 90 to 180 degrees, right? So this is 90 to 180 degrees upside down. And if anywhere in that process there is a misfire, and one misfire could be that the information coming from the inner ear gets lost. One part of that kind of very complicated little structure is not sending information. Maybe the fluid is over full. Maybe there's a lot of extra fluid in there. Maybe as we age, our ear rocks can get, the area can get kind of dehydrated, and our ear rocks can sometimes float or get moved, or we get a hit. And this doesn't take very much either. I just fall and I hit my head, and my ear rock got shifted into one of those canals instead of staying in this nice little place. This is, when we get older, easier to happen, but we're finding that it's happening in that this information is getting skewed in young athletes with various reasons, one thing I found is that there's a high percentage of athletes with fear that when I ask them about their medical history, I find out that they had tubes in their ears either once or 3 times, that they grew up and they had a lot of ear infections when they were little, they had a lot of strep throat, they continually maybe still have, and they may not have all of these things, but these are like checkoffs where I start going, I wonder if their vestibular system is part of the problem. These are like real clear signs. There's other levels of performance that just working the system will change. But like, I'm finding that, maybe they have allergies quite frequently, right? And what we have to realize is that that inner ear is also connected to all the sinuses. It's all connected in one space. There are lots of little grooves and turns and twists along the way, but it's all one space. So if I have a lot of puffiness going on here, it can affect what's happening in my ear. And it's going to affect my ability to know spatial awareness and where I am in space. And if that happens, it can affect fear. It can heighten the alarm system, because the alarm system is getting more information from the ear. And when it gets more information, it's like, hey, there's something going on. And now I'm heightened. And now I'm doing something that maybe it was already challenging in the first place. And now it's gotten more challenging. And so there are sometimes places where I've taught athletes. So I've had multiple ones in the last few months that they were working their skill ladder progression. They were already kind of struggling with the fear that had happened because they'd had some falls, they had some balking, they had been going down like the Brussels sprout highway. And then they got onto the French fry highway. And all of a sudden, literally everything was going great on Friday. But then on Monday, like they started like not going and like balking and having a hard time. And then now, instead of not able to do the rounded back handspring back tuck, it went all the way down to I can't do a rounded back handspring, all the way down to like I'm having trouble doing a back walk over back handspring. And at that point, when the athlete shows up to me, they're like already in this huge record player dialogue of I've lost it. I'm back at the bottom of the ladder. I can't do anything. The fear is back. I don't understand. On Friday, I was fine. Now I'm not. Now I have a week worth of trying to push through something that's not working. And I looked at her and I was like, your sinuses are really puff. You're sounding really nasally. Like, when did, do you got an allergy infection, sinuses happening? Like, what's going on? And she's like, well, yeah. And I literally have 3 cases like this in the last couple of months that I can actually quote from. They all presented the same way. Now, I will say they were all females, but that doesn't mean anything. I've seen males with sinus infections and have similar issues. But in the last few months, so all three females, all happen to be in their teens, like 13 to, oh no, 12 to like 15. They're not driving yet. But and they all came in with the same story. They were overcoming something, doing pretty well, but then one day just couldn't do it. And then got into this story for a week or so, showed up here, and I was like, I think, and one of them, I actually called her ear infection before she actually had one. She was feeling a little stuffy, things totally shifted. And I said, I think you're getting sick. Like, I think you have like an ear infection coming on. She's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. And so, sure enough, 2 days later, she had a full-blown double ear infection, and went to the doctor, looked at it. It was all, totally inflamed. And she was like, you diagnosed my ear infection before it happened. And I go, no, I just knew that your inner ear was affected. And I could see that there's a pressure, something was happening in your pressure system, right? So with these three athletes, it was really interesting because in reality, they were perfectly fine doing their skills and they were all the way up to the top of their skill ladder progression. But then, lo and behold, I ask all of them the same question. When did this stuffiness start? And they'll go, on Monday. And I go, you woke up with it? And like, yeah, I woke up Monday morning, all this drainage, da da da. Okay. When did you start having trouble tumbling backwards? And they're like, Monday practice. I go, Monday evening? And they're like, yeah. And I said, and the allergies is getting a little worse or better? Like, oh, it's getting a little worse. And I was like, okay. And I was like, it makes sense to me now. And so I have a video. Do I have it? No, I don't have a video of it. I don't think I have a video of it because I was spotting her. So one of the athletes who was doing, round back handspring layouts and getting past all of that fear, couldn't even do a back handspring after this happened. Like literally, she showed up 1 week after this started. And it was the same story. Like the Monday morning, woke up, Monday evening, couldn't do the back handspring. And so I had her standing here. I said, okay, well, I just want to test your vestibular system, how you feel going backwards. And she went to just do a standing back bend. So I said, I just want to do something simple because I want to see what your ear's doing. And she would do a standing back bend, and she was standing up and she went like this. She was here. And she's like, she's already kind of panicked a little. And I was like, okay, that's interesting because she's not had this problem before. And then she goes to go back. And as soon as her head went back like this, she goes like this. And I was like, what happened? She goes, I don't know. I didn't know where I go. Did you know where you were? She goes, no. So like literally her head went back. I don't know. It was probably like from vertical, maybe 15, 20 degrees, not even that. And she bailed on a back bend. And I was like, do you even know where you are? And she's like, no. And I said, well, this would make sense. So then I did some testing. I just have them stand. I think I probably have some videos, but just for time's sake, I'm going to do it. So I have them stand like this, and I just push from one side, and then I push from the other side. And when all of your ear and everything is giving the right input, right, she should be super strong both directions. So I'm just pushing and pushing. And then I say, okay, I want you to look all the way up. And then I push. And what will happen with athletes who are having trouble tumbling backwards is when I push, they might be weak on both directions, or they might just be weak in one direction. And if they're weak on their left side, when we push from the left, I'm not sure. Yeah, there we go. So if they're weak when I push from the left, it's their right ear. So it's opposite because of the brain crossing to the body. So, but this side is the same, like the ear is a direct access to the brain, so there's no crossing the midline. So right ear, right brain, left side. So if they're weak and I push on the left and they give really easily, it's likely a right ear issue. And the same thing on the right, if they give when I push, then it's likely a left ear issue. And you'll see that like straightforward. And they might even be weak just straightforward, but it'll get worse when they look up if there's a tumbling backward situation, and it'll get worse if it's a tumbling forward situation, or like a cast handstand where the head has to go forward. It'll get worse in a forward position. And I'll use that as one of my references. I'll also use like, if I have an athlete that won't lean forward on a cast handstand, it's usually one of the pieces to the puzzle besides pushing out and learning a handstand shape and all that stuff may be that their vestibular system, or another great example is inability to cast and put their feet on a squat on. As they go to do the squat on, they're pushing back and they're not making it over. Many times it's because their inner ear is not wanting to go forward. And so they'll show up weak when they look down. And so I'll use that as a test. I'll also take whatever skill they're struggling with and make it lower on the ladder, like the back bend. Instead of the round up back handspring, I went it to a back bend, and she just didn't know where she was. She was startled. And I said, well, rate your alarm system right now. How high is your alarm? 0 is chilling out on the beach and, drinking a Mai Tai. And 10 is like, lock me up. I'm going to I'm about to have a panic attack or something. And I said, where are you on that scale? And she's like, it's like a 7. And I was like, that's a back bend, like that's just a back bend back. I said, well, what if I touch you? And so I touched her and she went and she goes, oh, that was like a 4. And I said, what changed? And what it is that my hand gave her a proprioceptive feedback, which helped her other receptors, the muscle spindles, the Golgi tendon organs, the joint receptors. It helped those guys know where she was in space. So the spot can sometimes help us take time to train a vestibular system, because her head has to go through the bridge kickover, right? Or the back bend kickover. But the spot is giving her the feedback. So she's actually relying a little heavier on the proprioceptive feedback that I'm giving her, but the inner ear is starting to get the movement, which is why on the ladder, having spots is a good thing. I see it. Patricia says, light bulb moment. All Esperanza needs is a tap to do the skill. Yeah. So what happens? So here's the thing, and plenty of coaches, I'm sure you have this. And there's also some examples I've seen on the elite level, so I'll talk about it. But like plenty of coaches know that if they just tap the kid at one point, they'll release properly for their flyaway. Every coach knows this. Yeah, just tap them at that one spot and they'll let go and they'll flip. What's happening is their inner ear is not giving enough input to tell them where to let go. And so when you give them the tap, they know to let go because they're using their proprioceptive feedback, not their vestibular feedback. That makes so much sense, Trista says. Yeah. So it's light bulb moments. Okay, so now here's a great example of someone using visual cues instead of a vestibular system, because athletes may be visually dominant, okay? And there is no wrong system to use, by the way, but if we can have all the systems doing their best, you're going to get better outcomes more consistently. And then you won't have as much fear. Because basically when one of the systems is a haywire or giving faulty information, maybe it's giving wrong information because one of my ear rocks has gotten shifted from a fall, or maybe I'm older and I've got benign positional vertigo, but like that's a whole nother extreme of that. So that's the extreme of it, which doesn't typically happen. Okay, you guys hear people talk about, I've got vertigo. They're usually in their mid 40s to early 50s, many times women. That's the most common people. And someone will say, oh, they got BPV, which is benign positional vertigo. What has happened is one of their ear rocks has shifted out of the space and into the canal. And now their eyes, when they stand up, are like spinning, and it's like the room is spinning, right? That is an extreme example of what can happen. But with younger athletes who've had fluid issues, right, because of allergies, sinuses, chronic sinusitis, they've had tubes in their ears, all of those things are like injuries to the vestibular system. Is that a light bulb moment? Did you can actually injure your vestibular system. Everybody goes to the pediatrician and they get tubes in their ears, or they deal with, with the nasal sprays and all these other things. And, whatever we're taking, Claritin D and all these things to dry up the mucus, which has to happen, by the way. Don't not do that. You have to do, and there's lots of ways to do it. There's natural ways to do it. There's medical ways to do it. I'm not here to tell you the right way to dry up the stuff inside you. That is not my scope. But no one thinks about the fact that when all that fluid was in there, whatever the kid was doing during that time, they're training their vestibular system and their body that with that amount of fluid, this is normal space. This is where I am in space. You dry up that fluid, there needs to be a period, and it can be really quick. It doesn't have to be like this long drawn out, like we got 6 weeks of therapy to do whatever. But like there needs to be a training period to retrain that inner ear. Fluid pressures are down. This is now my center, because there's a change in things. Same thing with the tubes in the ears, right? So I can't tell you how many athletes, when I ask them about their past history and they have a fear issue, they have that. Now, that being said, just because they had tubes in their ears and inner ear issues doesn't, I can't say that it's like 100% correlated that they're going to have a fear problem. I can't, I mean, I don't know, you know, there's so many factors, like maybe they love to swing as a kid and they trained their inner ear naturally. Maybe they love to spin and they trained their inner ear naturally. There are things kids do to naturally train their inner ear. So when your kid's like rolling on the floor forward and backwards, they're training their inner ear. When they're sitting in the swing and spinning, they're training their inner ear. The kid that can't sit still and sits on the spinny chair at the doctor's office and spins, they're training their inner ear. So like, I can't say definitively that one causes the other, because there's a lot of factors in between. But I found that a lot of kids that have fear do have some history of these kind of things. But on the other side of it, there's a ton of kids who don't have this history, who have fear. And I found that we can do the skill ladder, we can do calming techniques, we can do mental choreography, we can do visualizations, we can do action words, we can do all the things. And we're still butting up into fear because we never address the vestibular system. So you have to address the vestibular system as part of it. I was going to go down one other path about this vestibular system. It was a standing thing. Where was I headed with it? Oh, so one example with coaches, if you watch like the Olympics this last year, you'll see a lot of coaches who put their hand out. They'll put their hand out when they want an athlete to see, like, so from when they're, for instance, an athlete's doing a Nakachev releasing, you'll see a coach put their hand out. And what they're doing is they're giving the athlete a target visually. So instead of relying solely on their vestibular system, they're giving them a visual cue so that the visual input increases. And so you can do that. Visual cues are great. They're great ways to work. But if you have a really sluggish vestibular, you don't want to be relying solely on one system or the other. You want all the systems to be working together. And when there is a disconnect, that's when you have sometimes timing issues go off. Like some of the things we talk about, like with Simone Biles and her twisty, right? Her twisties and her vault. It makes sense to me that like you think about how many multi-planes she's going through. So when someone's doing a backflip, they're flipping through one plane. Everything's going in this direction. They're going a front flip, everything's going in this direction. If they're just standing and twisting, everything's going in this plane of direction. Now, if you add a flip while twisting, you're going in this backwards plane. You're going in this twisting plane. Now, if you add a flip with a twist and another flip with a twist, your inner ear is going through multiple planes with multiple axes all at the same time in a very quick moment. And if you look at how many skills Simone Biles does flipping and twisting, double, double here, double, double there, triple this, I can't even keep track of all the skills, right? She's so amazing. It would make sense to me that at some point, because with every skill and axis change and timing, she's creating a highway from the inner ear, the eyes, all those receptors. It's a complex highway, and it's going into the brain and it's creating all the actions that create one of her biles, right? There's biles 1, 2, 3, like you name them. She's amazing, right? But she has a highway for each one of those. Those highways, when you look at it, start to become very similar. And if you look at the vault, when she was coming, and you notice she changed her vault, which I think was the best skill selection she could have ever done. And not that she ever asked me or even knows me. I mean, we've passed each other in passing multiple times, but like, I'm no one, right? She doesn't know who I am. And I'm not here to say I ever treated her or ever touched her. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm just making observation based on science, based on the skill selection that she chose, that it was a great skill selection to decide to do the triple back off, like, or the double back. How many flips does she do off the vault now? Someone help me. Triple. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was a triple, but I didn't want to make it up. She flips so many times, you have to like count. So, you know, that triple vault, right? Number one, she's Simone. She's super powerful. She can do anything. But I love that she said this double, this twist, this twist flipping and doing it on all the apparatuses, it ain't working. I'm just going to make my own vault. And she's strong enough and amazing enough to do that. But it makes sense to me. You have so much momentum and power moving this forward. So you already have this run, and this is part of the reason with vault. And our eyes are having to do convergence. So convergence and divergence is when you have your finger here, and I'll just show you, like, my eyes start to come close, and then my eyes start to go out. And then I diverge even further to 20 feet out or more. So runway is about 80 feet. If they're at the end of the 80 feet, you have a wide view of divergence of the eye. So visually, I'm wide. As I run closer to the vault, I'm getting convergence of my eyes. Matter of fact, I better have pinpoint convergence when those hands hit for a Yurchenko vault onto the runway, right? And so you have fast momentum of the vestibular input coming from the ears going in a straight plane. Then you have a quick turn. And this is the part that my adult athlete was struggling with, is the down and up. The down and up. So you're moving through multi-axes while also, even just a round off, you're moving forward at the same time. So you're moving forward while rotating into that round off. So round offs can be a very hard thing, which I also a reason why I think a lot of athletes struggle with turning over a round off. And also why when you see little kids who first start cartwheels, they're never in the right, like when you're a gymnast coach, you want them to be in the same plane, right? You want to be here, but they're always going this way. It's because their ears are struggling with getting up into that plane. Nowhere else in life do they do that before they learn a cartwheel. If you really think about it, nowhere else in motor development of like crawling, now rolling, you roll this way, right? But nowhere else in motor development do we actually ask them to go upside down sideways. It doesn't happen. It's the first time that happens is in a cartwheel when they're very little. And this is the reason why I used to love teaching preschool gymnastics. This is why I think this is one of the reasons, besides some muscles. And, you know, we tell them, oh, you just got to get used to it. But one of the pieces is their ears need to learn. So part of doing skill progressions is naturally building movement patterns for their inner ears. So their inner ear is naturally starting to kind of change. But sometimes you need extra input. You need to give extra input to the vestibular system. So you got Simone running very fast. Then you have the inner ear change into the round off. Now you go back into the back handspring, that other vault from, so that another movement backwards. So if I had to trace it, I'm coming forward, I come up and out, and then I come back. And then as she exits the vault, when she was doing the, you know, double or full in, full out, like all the twisting and flipping, every flip, her ear has to flip at the same time it's twisting. So multi-axis with all the momentum built from that speed. So it's not just multi-axis in one area, it's still moving. If you think about that on a like anatomy and biomechanical perspective, does anyone's mind just kind of go like, that's a lot to ask your brain, and it's all firing in, you know, milliseconds of what's happening. So it makes sense to me that at some point, some of those highways got a little interjangled. And it's like, am I on floor doing a double? Am I at the vault? Wait, now I have this momentum. Because see, the momentum from floor compared to what she got from a run on vault was very different. A run on vault was giving way more input. So it's like at some point, it's too much input. And then you add the alarm system that's already up because you're at the world stage, you're at the Olympics. And then before that, you add all the other external factors on the Lion, which she had a lot going on outside of the sport. Bless her for all the amazing things she's done for athletes and advocating for athletes and for mental health, et cetera, sense. But you've got a huge Lion already alarming the alarm system. So it would make sense that at some point, the brain just says, stop. This is making too much, not enough sense, right? So I want to very quickly show you guys a really cool drill for going backwards. We'll talk about going backwards and forwards. Now, I learned some of these basic concepts in PT school as far as vestibular input and stuff like that. I got more honed in working with Yuka Segoria at Level Up Neuro. I have to say that because Yuka and I worked together for like 2 or 3 years now, co-treating Colt and just working together as colleagues. And so I honed in even more. And then I've since taken some of those concepts and modified them more. So I want to show you guys just a couple really cool drills, and you can do them over the edge of your couch. You can do them over a exercise ball. You can also do them over a barrel. And so on my Instagram, you'll see there's some with me doing them with some athletes over the barrel. One thing that you want to kind of activate the brain a little more is, now you can do any of these with just your thumb. Okay, again, you want something visual to help activate part of that vestibular and the visual and vestibular connection, right? And you can do it just with your thumb, but it's more accurate or effective if you have like a stick with some letters on it. You can use a Sharpie with the S on it. You can use pens that have writings on it for advertising for whoever. Point being is that if you have a letter to look at, it hones in my focus in my brain and I get a little more effective feedback. So for a back handspring or anything going backwards, and I'll do some of these drills, like I'll do backward roll drills out of it. I'll do all kinds of things to try to mimic. Basically, I'm giving them something to look at while I try to make the ear go through the positions they need to go through with whatever skill they're doing. So that's the formula. I just told you guys a big secret. So the formula is I make them look at this thing while I make their ear do the movement that they're having trouble with without doing the skill most of the time. So sometimes it's a drill, sometimes it's literally just a movement. So for a back handspring, I'm just going to have them go up, and I want to, hold on, I like to get a little further. Now you can see this has got a little give to it because I don't want it, like, I don't want them bouncing off of it. I want them to be able to mold over it. So I'm here and I just follow the stick back, and they only go, wow, they only go as far as they can go. They only go as fast as they can, keeping their eye on the letter. So some athletes have to go really slow at first because they lose the letter. And then another piece of component, so that's one part of your ear. And the next part, I just add little bounces. So it's a different part of the inner ear we're working. And I do 5 bounces. And then when they come from here, I have them circle their arms and come up. Because all I want to train is back, not forward. So I have them circle their arms and not look at the letter. So we're here, I go back, I bounce, and then I circle and come back up. And I'll have them do 5 of these, bounce, and you'll see I'm getting better at it. And then come back up. So I'll do 5 with one hand and then 5 with the other hand. Going back.
Brandy, what if the letter gets blurry? Is that a problem? What if the letter gets blurry?
Then they need to slow down.
Okay, so the letter can't get blurry. Okay.
I mean, ideally, no, right? Ideally, just slow them down because there's something going on with the input loop. So it's a way to tell you that they're losing it, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like if Aria does it with a finger, because we've done this before, not the bounce, but we've done the backward part. If Aria does it with a finger, she says it's fine, but when she does it with a letter, it gets blurry.
Yeah. So that's more focus. So slow her down.
Okay.
Slow down. Now, if I have an athlete that's having trouble, and this is another piece of it that I really like, is if I have an athlete that's having trouble also with tumbling backwards, the floor is coming at them fast, right? And so part of that is the ability to converge and diverge. So I'll take them into the position upside down, just like this, right? And then I'll have them bring the stick in until the point where they lose it or it gets blurry or they get double vision, back out. And then in and back out. I'll do 5 on each hand. Now, if I want to get even wider, I might say, look 20 feet out at like a block or something else that's over there. And now look at the stick. Now look at the block, look at the stick, block, stick. And then I might bring them here. Block, stick, block, stick. And so all we're doing is working on the eyes connection to the ear with when objects are coming close to us. So for instance, if I'm coming into a release move or like a bail or the bar is coming closer to them. I'm going into a back handspring on beam. The beam is coming closer to them. My eyes and ears need to get this. They need to be giving the same information that the beam is coming close. So I need to get that from my ears, but I also need to get it from my eyes. So it's convergence and divergence. And so I'll do the convergence and divergence. I'll do the movement backwards and then add a bounce because it's a different part of the vestibular system. Now, if I have an athlete who is having trouble going forward, then we'll just put them forward over something. And so I like to also hang them over a bar. You'll see on my Instagram, go to my Instagram and look at the cast handstand video, and you'll see her hanging over a bar. And she's doing towards her belly button and then back up. She goes towards her belly button, back up, towards her belly button, back up. But she's hanging upside down because part of getting into the cast was she wasn't getting her shoulders and her head over the bar and she was actually pulling and closing her shoulders and locking it up. Actually, hold on. I have a video for that because I pulled stuff for Sean about the handstands earlier. Yeah, let's see. Go ahead and promote to panelists. Okay, so let me see if I can, where's it at? Okay, let me find it really quick. I had shoulder stuff. That's before, oh, this is her before, right? Okay. I think that's her before. Okay. And then I didn't pull, but I can find it real quick, guys. Is it this one? Yeah. And then, is this the one without? Okay. So just really quick, let me see if I can do this, and then we'll have to go in a little bit, but let me grab, I'm pretty sure I have a video of her doing hanging over the bar. And so it works really well. There it is. Let me drop it. It says it's waiting. Why are you waiting? Hold on. Sorry, guys. I want to show you guys this exercise. So one way that I'll do this, though, is hanging over a ball forward, and I'll have them kind of this ball's a little short. It needs to be a little higher, but I would have them bounce up and down.
Randy, we can't see you.
Oh, good point. Thanks, guys. All right. So one way that I'll have them work on the forward issues is I'll have them take the letter and they'll go forward here and then bounce this way. Now that only works on my ear from here to here. If I need to get all the way upside down, I have to hang them from a bar. And sometimes we can get them to bounce, sometimes I can't because they have a hard time with it. For some reason, it's not airdropping. Come on. All right, let's see. Go. You can do it. All right, let me pull up these other ones really quick and then I'll see if I can show you the exercise. Okay, so this is like an example of forward movement. Now this might look like they have trouble with front handsprings or front tucks or front layouts. They can't, like if they're trying to do a front layout and they can't get open, it could be a vestibular issue. Let's see. Okay, here it is. So this was her cast handstand beforehand. There's a couple of reasons why she locks out, but one is her vestibular. Hold on. What do you feel? What's closing? So do you see how her ear stays fairly level? So even though she's casting, so first of all, she's pulling down. I cannot open up her shoulders to save my life. And part of it was she had been trained to overhollow. That was one part. And there's no way you're going to open your shoulders when you do that. But the other part was her vestibular system. If you watch her inner ear, she just goes from, right now her head is already forward in this plane. And then when she shifts into the handstand, her head only goes from like here to here. And to get all the way in, her head needs to come to here. And so we did some vestibular drills, which just popped up. Let me see. Here it is. Okay, let me exit screen share and let me add this. So we did a little vestibular drill. So this is what we did. And then we worked her handstand work. So she's following the sticks. She's curling and she's following, but she's having a hard time moving her head. There, she finally got it. But see, you hear me? Like, move, make sure your head is following. There we go. Now her head's starting to want to move.
That's fine? Yes.
And so we did 5 on each hand, just like that. And then we worked on some handstand work, which we can talk about another day. And she ended up doing some handstands here with a band after we did some other work. So watch this. This was in about less than 10 minutes.
Wait. I get my hand in. Hey, go for it. Oh, yeah. Press
So did you see how so that was her first one? You heard her so excited. She didn't even know that that was possible. But when she casts here, watch, the last thing still to go was her head. Then she got her head in. And then she's like, oh my gosh. And then she realized where she was and pushed up. Okay. So we worked a few more like this. So the bands are giving her, guess what? Increased proprioceptive feedback. She decided to flop off. Her bands are giving her increased proprioceptive feedback. And then I trained the vestibular system. And then sometimes recently I had one of the athletes put the stick. I had the athlete put the stick here. And I said, I want you to cast and look for your letter as you're casting. And once you hit handstand, look towards the wall over here. I had something else on the wall. So I used proprioception with the band. I used visual input by telling her to look for something. And then we trained her vestibular system to make it easier. So we worked all 3 systems in like 3 very simple drills. And in less than 10 minutes, we had a cast handstand like this.
Fast one. Up here.
See, our ear went straight in.
Yeah.
So when we went to that one,
Yeah.
hold on. Here we go. Let's see. Okay, so when she's here, look how much, first of all, look where her ear went, way further forward, which is necessary. You have to fold over the bar. So first of all, this position's already better. And then when she goes to cast, look where she drops her head to. So much better because her vestibular knows where she is. And then she has a chance and gets the head in pretty quickly, like actually right on time. The head is actually moving in conjunction with the feet at about the same rate. The head could move a little bit faster to meet up the feet a little faster. And then we get this beautiful handstand that she didn't even know was possible. She was literally not casting anything higher than what she showed on that very first cast. So what we trained here was vestibular, visual, and proprioceptive feedback in order to get this position and in order to get the movement. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it explains why every time I've had a sinus infection, it makes me loopy and dizzy. So yeah, makes complete sense.
It's a pressure system. So you're adults, everyone has experienced this. Everyone has experienced this. When we get pressure in our sinuses, it creates this, we get loopy, we're kind of a little dizzy, we're a little off, right? And it's because it's a pressure system. So if you change any amount of pressure, and look at how detailed, when you look at the anatomy, look at how minute and minuscule it's taking in information.
Yeah.
So any change in the pressure system changes your ability to know where you are in space. If it's me and you, Patricia, and we're just walking around being average Joe people, that's probably not a big deal. But if I'm trying to ask my athlete to flip backwards, we probably better wake up that vestibular system. Like I spent a lot of my seasons in college, well, high school and college, with sinus infections, to the point where no one would share a balance beam with me because I had a toilet paper roll at the end, pull out the toilet paper, blow my nose, stick it inside the toilet paper roll, and then go. And I remember at some point it was so bad, I had to go to the trainer, and I was like, I'm so disoriented. Like I'm all over the place on the beam. And she helped me do a bunch of like acupuncture and some other stuff to try to dry up the fluid because it had become such a problem. But I think for me, I look back at it and I remember that I think I trained like that so much that I kind of trained my system that when it had a certain amount of pressure on, this is center. But anytime there was a change from like, I'm healthy to I have allergies, I remember being this huge, like just falling off the beam, struggling in the practice, etc.
And one other thing too is, like, I wish more coaches could hear this, because that's what I mean, going to camps and training at different gyms, the number of times a coach has done the little tap tap on her back and she's gone for her back handspring or back walk over on the beam. I can't tell you how many times, but I can see and hear, and not that any of them have been rude or anything, but to the point where they're like, oh my gosh, you got it, why am I here? Like, you don't need me. Not realizing that the tap she did need, she needed
Right.
that to tell her you're safe to go back.
So here's the thing. So this is the thing, is the tap we can use proprioceptive feedback. We can use the bands, we can use the tap, we can use the spot to help train the system in the process. But you have to start, while doing that, I need to be training my vestibular system and my visual system, because I need to wean from the coach tapping me, right? I need to start relying more heavily on the other two systems instead of relying so much on the proprioceptive feedback I'm getting from the coach touching me. Now you can use the proprioceptive feedback, right? We use like barrels to do back handsprings over. We use hands to do it. My daughter last night wanted to show me a front handspring, and she was so funny when she landed. She looked super surprised. And I said, do you know where you were? She's like, no, not really. And she's super excited. She's just doing like, fun gymnastics, right? And I said, do you want to put the barrel out and do a front handspring? And I want you to look for the wall. And she went front handspring, just stuck it and was like, oh. And I was like, she needed some visual input because her vestibular wasn't giving her enough information. Now the key is that, again, you want to always train the balance of these. So any of these vestibular exercises I gave today, and there's lots more you can do. They're not going to hurt anyone, right? If for some reason they do something and their balance, like let's say you test them. So I do the exercise and then I retest whatever was weak. Maybe it was here, maybe it was looking up, maybe it was looking down. I retest the simple skill. Do you know where you are? And also you'll see that the simple skill will get more smooth. It'll be nicer. Like you saw, her handstand got way less choppy, just smooth movement once she had the vestibular system working. And I took away the proprioceptive feedback. I took away the bands. Now I was still spotting because I'm still getting her used to the handstand. I should pop in a video now. She, after this, figuring this out, 1 week later got her giants. 1 week later got giants for the first time. And that was just from training the vestibular. She was like, she's just a rock star right now, because she's been like just checking off the skill list. She's got about 8 or 9 skills she's gotten since she started working this stuff. And she was just blown away, her mom and her both. Like, wow, we're just on a spree, right? Because I was like, well, you had one link that was really affecting everything else, right? So you got to train. So point being is that you can train the vestibular, and if they get weaker, then that is not the exercise for them. Okay, but for the most part, it's not going to hurt anyone. Like, it's not going to cause you problems. But if they get weaker, you should definitely, that's probably not the exercise for them. You need to go in a different direction. Try it in a different way, right? Maybe it's not a backwards issue, it's a frontwards issue. But if they're getting stronger, and even athletes who are like doing really well, this can add that little extra. The little extra, like they're catching 5 out of 10. This girl was having trouble with her back handspring on beam. And we did some of these back handspring vestibular stuff with her. And since doing that, she's like, I'm hitting literally every one. She's like, I'm 5 for 5. She's like, I can't believe it. I went 5 for 5. And before she was going 0 for 5. And so truly just finding where they are in space really helps. And for like an athlete that's like a higher level, it might be just changing their timing enough that they catch 5 for 5 instead of 2 out of 5. So it'll help you with all those things. One of the things Breeze is saying is, yeah, like, and kids with allergies have especially a hard time. You're correct. So the thing we have to pay attention to is when a kid is doing like the 3 athletes I was talking about earlier, where like they're building back their confidence, they're coming back, and they all of a sudden wake up one day and they all of a sudden they can't do the skill that they were doing. They're not even close to the top of the ladder. They've fallen down the ladder. Ask them, recognize, are they having inner ear issues? Did they have a fall that they hit their head and that might have affected their inner ear? Do they have allergies or sinuses or an ear infection going on? And then bring it to the athlete's attention before they start the inner dialogue, before they start that broken record player that says, why are you back down the ladder? You're never going to get whatever it is at the top of the ladder. You're never going to get it. Da, 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 da. Like that monkey in their head will start playing, because once that's playing, we're now feeding the Brussels sprouts highway. And then also the question in lies when to push, when not to push. Like there were a couple times I had some pretty good falls on my flights on beam when I should not have pushed. I was sick and tired. And those two things together made for not a good experience, and some bruises and some other bumps and scrapes and some other bad falls. Okay. And those bad falls, they went to that record player that just kept playing. They didn't help. Whereas if I as an athlete, or my coach as a coach, or even my parents, but like I didn't know I had a choice at the time. I didn't know I had a choice to speak up and say, I'm too tired to do this today, because I thought that that was an excuse. That would be like an excuse to not doing the workout in my assignment. And as far as I knew, is I had to do my assignment every day. And so if I had like spoken up and said, it's okay, if I'd known it was okay, and if I'd known that I had a choice, I could have spoken up and said, Saturday morning, 8 a.m. practice. I didn't sleep well last night. I have this allergy thing going on. I'm not feeling well. Could I do this beam assignment on Tuesday or Monday when I'm healthier? And the answer should have been, yeah, why don't you just go to the floor line and do the assignment to your best of your ability, instead of creating a situation where I had a huge fall that also fed, and that happened twice in my high school career, which fed a 3-year battle with fear. So we have to sometimes know, number one, our athlete and who we're dealing with. And most athletes, almost all of them, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, they want to be good at what they're doing. They want to please the coach, they want to please their parents, and they want to achieve their goals. And if they're telling me not feeling really up to something, we might want to look at it and say, is it affecting their inner ear? Do they really know where they are in space? And is today the day to push? Because one workout, one routine, one event is not going to make or break someone's like end goal. Now, if they do it all the time, then we need to figure out, what can we do to help you have these deal with these sinuses? Do you need some medical care to deal with these allergy situations? Is there a stress situation? Because it's the other thing we're finding. I had multiple cases, I've talked about it before in the past, of athletes that a stress response was triggering a whole nervous system response and flaring up their allergies. They even tested, they weren't allergic to a thing, but every season they had allergies during season. And when we addressed their mindset and their alarm system and calming down the alarm system, after a 5-year battle of allergies all season and sinus infections, and then wanting to do allergy, like rotor-rooter stuff, they found out, they tested them not allergic to anything when they did the pin pricking stuff. And sure enough, we said, hey, let's work on this for the next 2 years. And we did. For the first year, she had 60% improvement that season. By the second year, she was 100% improvement. Now she's competing in college with no allergies, no sinus infections. So, we got to look at what it is that's contributing to some of these things, because inflammation in here, even if it's made from what's called neurogenic inflammation, which means their alarm system's irritated and inflamed, and the alarm is on, right? There's a lion in the room. Maybe it's because of competition season. That athlete's case, it was. What's called neurogenic inflammation. So even neurogenic inflammation will create pressure changes in the system, which then creates, I don't know where I'm in space, which will feed fear. What were you going to say, Trista? I know you had something good. Come on in.
Oh, sorry. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm just thinking on that.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
I mean, I'm not saying that every single case is the same way, but it's definitely something to look at with every athlete, and work on their vestibular system. So to make any athlete good, all three of those systems need to be functioning well. So you should train them. And unfortunately, most people who do like, balance training, they put their foot on like a soft surface, they stand on one leg, and they call that balance training. That is only working one system, the proprioceptive system. And if they're staring at something and their eyes are open, then they're probably using the visual system to help the proprioceptive system. So they may not even be fully training the proprioceptive system. So if you want to like hone in and train just proprioceptive, you want to remove the visual and challenge the proprioceptive system. But you also want to you can't really remove the vestibular system either, the inner ear. But if you're trying to challenge the eyes, then you need to do eye movement. You need to be focusing on something far, focusing on something close. You need to be moving just your eyes up and down, side to side. I just recently posted how to improve a front handspring with eye exercises. We did one exercise to open up with proprioceptive feedback with the bands and resistance to open up her shoulders, but the rest of everything was eye exercises. By changing her eyes and the input coming in from there and the proprioceptive, you'll see on the video on the Instagram, her front handspring went way better, way better. And her mom was like, we did those exercises on Monday, and on Wednesday, she texted me and was like, she has a front handspring and she's never had one. She's been struggling it forever.
So Brandon, how long does it last? I think that was kind of where I was heading with that. Like you just said it too. Does it last 2 days? And how often are you supposed to do it?
Yeah.
And what if you can't do it right before a skill? Like, can you do it every day and train something later? Sorry.
Yeah, so you can, that's a really good question. So you can train. So the thing is you're taking a new highway, right? So you do want to train, like I was saying, you want to, just training their eyes and the visual system, that's that. But to train the vestibular system, you want to work balance while moving your head. If you're not moving your head, you're not training the vestibular system. So those three different pieces need to be trained. Now, how often to do it and how long will the results last? So first of all, it's a new highway. So every person's gonna be a little different, but it might last 30 minutes. It might last 2 hours. It might last a day. It kind of depends on their alarm system and how quickly they learn, right? The best way to do this exercise, yes, doing it consistently each day will help you create more learning. So doing it, and the cool thing is like you can do this exercise 2-3 times a day and it takes you like less than 30 seconds, right? Or a minute if they roll all over the place. And they're 7 years old, like Aria. It might take you a minute or two. But what the best way our brain learns, if possible, is to do this exercise and then turn around and do the skill or do a drill as part of the skill. So I'll do this exercise and have them do a bridge kickover. I'll do this exercise, have them do a back bend kickover. I'll do this exercise, have them do a back walkover. Depends on where they are in that ladder. But like doing this exercise, if someone has a ladder, I would do it, like if they're working the whole ladder, I would find some breaking points where they do this exercise 2 or 3 times throughout the ladder. If they're working the whole progression in one get-go. Does that make sense? Does that answer?
Yeah. And what if that's not necessarily possible from like you're in a gym, that's not the skill that you're supposed to do type of thing.
You mean it's like the drill can't be done, or the skill, like they're not training that skill at that moment?
The drill cannot be done between the skills.
I mean, I would talk to coaches because this is so powerful. Like I really send them this link to the YouTube because it's so simple. Kids are standing there in line longer than 30 seconds. So it's like, if they could just do a set. So if you're doing it between turns, you wouldn't have to do a whole set of 5. You might just do a set of 3 and then go take a turn. That would be ideal. If you can't, then I would do it right before gym. And if you're at home, like let's say it's a backwards moving thing, then maybe you could do just a bridge kickover instead of a full back handspring or something, like how can we train the system? How can we train the system? So like I want to train the system and then use it. Train the system, then use it. That's ideal. But if it's not ideal, then you just train it. Like I said, if you can even just, I'm trying to think, like if you're talking about a handstand, like if it's something that you can get them in the same position at home, then that's great. Like if someone's doing a double back, you can do 2 backward rolls and
Okay.
that'll, right? So, you know, you want to, if you can, train it and then do a drill at least if possible. If not, train it, then go to practice and then train it again after practice. You'll get carryover the more you train it. And if it's something you do daily, over time it will carry over. I can't say exactly how long the carryover, like how long will it be before she carries over. It's kind of dependent from athlete to athlete.
Yeah, and it does get longer, is what you're saying, over time.
Yes. The more you train it, the longer it sticks.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just like any new neural highway. Like the more you go take that highway, the more it becomes part of your norm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys. Was this helpful? Did you guys find this? Did you guys find it helpful today?
Super. Very much so.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you guys want to talk more vestibular, we can talk more drills. We can do more stuff. Next week, we have a guest person. Oh, wonderful. Yes, loved it. Linking the 3 systems. Awesome. Oh, I did have a question. So is the vestibular system something like the muscle that can fatigue with overuse? Oh, this is a great question. I'm glad I'm going to answer this. So is the vestibular system something like muscles that can fatigue with overuse, or is it okay to do or use it as much as I want without negative effects, or build tolerance and need more? Okay, just like anything else, like even when you guys are using your brain, at some point you get tired, right? So this, you don't want to overuse this. So like I wouldn't say, you notice I gave sets of 5. The reason we do small sets is because you actually don't want to overstimulate it. What an overstimulation will look like is you do the test, they get stronger, they know where they are, it's getting better. And then all of a sudden you test them and they get weaker, or they don't get, their form starts to break. It's not as nice and clean as it was before, like on that cast handstand. That has told me that maybe their brain and the vestibular system needs a break. So just rest it, move on to something else, and you can come back to it later, just like you would any kind of like muscle work, right? Like if I'm doing lots of max repetitions with my arms, I'm going to take a break, go do some leg press, do something else, and then I'll come back and do my arms again. So that's why I said, like, if you're doing it in the ladder, I would do like a set of 3 to 5 at the beginning, and then I'd come back up and do another set or 3 to 5 in the middle somewhere in my ladder, and then maybe right before I get to my main thing, I'll do another set of 3 to 5 throughout a whole ladder. So if I was in 1 45-minute rotation, I might only do a few at the beginning, and then maybe a few in the middle, and maybe a few in the end. Maybe I don't need them until like the last couple turns if things are doing well. So yes, you can fatigue the system out because it's new, especially if it's new. Now, if someone has a very heightened response to these kind of drills, like they get super dizzy or something like that, that's kind of a normal response and can be. It should resolve within 3 to 5 minutes. But that is someone who's sensitive to these exercises, and you may not want to do them you want to spread them out so that they have recovery time. So yeah, you can fatigue the system out just like any other system. That was a really great question. Thank you, Breeze, for asking that. Any other questions before I move on, before we close out today? I'm super excited to announce, though, next week we have a colleague of mine. Her name is Christine. Christine is coming in. Oh my gosh, my brain just went blank on her. Oh, Christine Marshall. My brain just went blank on the last name. It's been a long day. So Christine Marshall is coming in. She is the founder of Nurturing Pathways. She has more than 25 years of experience in brain and body development, motor development, and motor learning. And she's super amazing. So we're going to come in and talk about the 3 building blocks to creating lifetime learners. And so please come and join us next week. She's going to be amazing. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff, a bunch of different systems and all these different things that we really, really need, the 3 building blocks to creating really good learners, right? So lifelong learners. Thank you guys so much for joining, and click the link again to register for next week so you can see me and Christine as we talk about the 3 building blocks for learning. And if you're new or you're listening to this recording, go to www.perfect10ptacademy.com and you can get my free training. Perfect, the number 10, ptacademy.com, and you can get my free training. The link is going to be in the description if you're on YouTube. Oh, you joined us from Brazil. I'm so glad. Oh, okay. Oh, you're coming to Santa Cruz. That's exciting. Well, nice to have you, Breeze. I'm so glad you joined us. I actually was just in Santa Cruz recently. And I'll be back there in November sometime. Super great to have you. Thanks for joining, Breeze. Join us next week if you can. We'd love to have you. And we're here every Wednesday. So yeah. And if you're new, check out my new my free training at perfect10ptacademy.com. Bye everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks, Brandy.
You're welcome.